friends, in this video we shall learn about the ring fence policy. The ring fence policy was a plan made by the British to protect their own land, for example Bengal. They wanted to protect Bengal from the enemies like Maratha and Afghan. Now what happened? They helped the nearby kingdoms like Awadh by giving them their British soldiers to fight against the enemies. Now there is a question that did the British give this help for free? So the answer is no. The king of that kingdom had to pay money for the British soldier. And who had started this ring fence policy? He was a British officer named Warren Hastings. So Warren Hastings started the ring fence policy. Now, because they wanted to keep their land safe without spending their own money. Later on what happened? Another British officer came, whose name is Wellesley, changed this policy a little bit and made it a new rule which is called as Subsidiary Alliance, which was just a stricter version of ring fence policy. Okay, this way the British slowly started controlling more Indian kingdoms. So let's see what is written over here. Warren Hastings followed the ring fence policy which aimed to create a buffer zone, okay, to protect the company's border. Warren Hastings took up the task of defending the border of Awadh with the aim of securing the company's Bengal border from Afghan invaders and Marathas on the condition that Nawab would bear the expenses of the army. So, the British wanted to protect their land from enemies, so they helped their neighboring Indian kingdom by giving them the British soldier, but told them that we will protect you, but you have to pay for it. Now, think of a fence around a house to keep it safe. The British made a fence of friendly states around the Bengal to stop enemies from attacking. Okay? And who had introduced it? Warren Hastings had introduced the ring fence policy. So next is the state thus brought under the ring fence system were assured of the military assistance against the external aggression, but the expenses of the British auxiliary troops was to be borne by those states. Those states will take care of the expenses of the British troops. And Wellesley's policy of subsidiary alliance was in effect an extension of the ring fence system. So it was the advanced version of ring fence policy, the subsidiary alliance of Wellesley. The next topic is subsidiary alliance. The subsidiary alliance was used by Lord Wellesley, who was Governor General from 1798 to 1805. Under this system, the ruler of an allied Indian state was forced to accept the permanent deployment of the British troops within his territory and pay the expenses for its maintenances. The Indian ruler had to agree to the appointment of the British resident in his court. Indian ruler could neither employ any European in their service nor wage war or negotiate with any other Indian ruler without consulting the company. In return for all this, the British protected the ruler from his enemy and adopted the policy of non-interference in the internal affairs of the friendly state. So one motive behind Wellesley's strengthening the subsidiary alliance system was the fear of Napoleon's campaign eastward. They felt that the French could attack the west coast of India. So try to understand that what is subsidiary alliance. It was a rule made by the Lord Wellesley when during 1798 to 1805 to make the Indian kings depend on the British for protection. So what did Indian king have to do? They had to keep the British soldier in their kingdom, number one. They had to pay for those soldiers, and they could not fight wars or talk to other kings without the British permission. They had to keep a British officer or who is called as resident in their court. Okay. So what did the British promise against these? They promised to protect the king from the enemies. And they said they would not interfere in the king's personal matter. But actually they did later. They started interfering in their internal matter as well. And like this, they took control of Indian kingdoms without fighting with them. And the king became weak and dependent on the British because they had no army or very less army and influenced by British soldiers. Slowly the British started ruling India in this way. So Lord Wellesley was afraid that the Napoleon, who was a French ruler, might attack India from the west coast and Mauritius. So he made Indian kings to keep the British soldier in their kingdom to stop any French attack. The British told the Indian king that we will protect you from your enemies, but in return, the Indian ruler had to keep the British soldier. The Indian ruler had to pay for those soldiers and they lost their freedom. They could not fight wars or talk to other neighboring rulers without the permission of the Britishers. And a British resident was kept in their court. So the British slowly took control of more and more Indian states using the excuse of security. They made Indian kings weak so that they could not rule properly. The people suffered because the British protected bad and kings become very lazy because the British handled everything. So the people were exploited. Okay. And this is how the British slowly increased their power over more Indian states. So all those things were discussed here. Now, furthermore, the Subsidiary Alliance would expand the company's hold over Indian states and gradually bring more and more areas under the company's ambit. And ambit means area of control. So it means that British slowly increased their power over more Indian states. Okay. Using the pretext of the security, the British took away the independence of the Indian ruler and the alliance made the Indian ruler weak and irresponsible. The subjects were exploited and was practically impossible to depose the oppressive ruler as they were protected by the British. So what happened to the Indian people? King became weak and lazy because they did not have to fight. And so cruel ruler who could not be removed because they are being given protection by the British soldier and the Britishers. So the people were treated unfairly and they had to suffer. And this is how British took control over the Indian states using the excuse of security. And this is how they made the Indian king weak so that they could not rule properly. So many Indian states had to sign the Subsidiary Alliance with the British, and some of the important ones were Hyderabad was the first state to accept the Subsidiary Alliance. Mysore, after Tipu's death, had to forcefully sign the Subsidiary Alliance. Awadh was forced to sign after losing the war. The Peshwas of Maratha, after losing the battle, were forced to sign. Scindia of Gwalior, after the defeat of the Second Anglo-Maratha War, was forced to sign. And Gaikwad of Baroda was another Maratha state which came under the British control. due to this subsidiary alliance. So many Indian kings lost their power and the British became the real ruler of the India. This is all in this video. We shall in the next video we shall learn about the evolution and the perfection and stages of application of the subsidiary alliance. Keep studying.